And that's what I encourage you to do, dirty data listener, when your boss says, "What's this KPI?" I encourage you to say, "Well, it's this, but here's why this KPI is some bullshit."
Well, if ChatGPT can't do it, then what makes you think you could do it?
Is still brought to you by Budweiser. It doesn't matter if they're paying me.
Sam Altman can get away with it, okay? He's the best looking guy in tech.
The race still cannot be broadcast together.
Wrong on both accounts. Wrong on all accounts. All accounts.
Hello and welcome to the Dirty Data Show, episode number 4. I'm your host, Evan Wimpy. Can you believe we've made it to 4 episodes? This thing is ticking off like a rocket ship. Fantastic. Thanks all for joining us. We've got a very, very dirty data show, scandalous data, manipulated data today. But before we get into today's stories, I'll do a little bit of housekeeping. Not really any housekeeping. I just like to hear myself talk. And if I get into the stories too quickly, I don't have enough time to just jibber jabber about whatever. Today's episode is brought to you by Budweiser, once again, the king of beers. For those of you who are watching, you'll notice this is a Budweiser can instead of the standard Budweiser bottle. That's because it is officially pool season. We got to start getting canned beer. So no glass around the pool. Okay, that's not dirty data that we want to contribute to. Okay, we're good stewards of the pool. We bring and drop and spill our canned beers, not our bottled beers that shatter glass. That's okay. Budweiser tastes great out of a can, tastes great out of a bottle, out of a bottle, Budweiser, Bottleweiser, the Canweiser. All right, episode number 4. Look, before we get going, there's an extremely bright light shining in my face. That's because it's nighttime. Much like episode 3, we filmed at night. That's because anything goes at night. I can say curse words, shit, poo. There'll be more to come. But I heard your feedback for episode 3. I wore sunglasses, and the feedback from the listener, thank you, dear listener, was that you couldn't stop staring in the reflection of the sunglasses at the light and at my computer screen. Well, look, we're responsive here on the Dirty Data Show, and the sunglasses are off today. But I'm going to need to reach out to some more experienced YouTubers and podcasters because with sunglasses on, the reflection is distracting. With sunglasses off, how could anybody stand it? These precious, pearly white, I guess pearly whites usually refer to teeth, but my eyes are pearly white, parts of them. Other parts are pearly and, sort of dark brown. My kids say black, but I promise you it's brown. I need some sunglasses if I'm going to be staring into this light, and I really want to record at night because this is the Dirty Data Show. And the scandalous dirty data we're going to be talking about tonight might not be safe for the daytime. Regardless, thank you for listening to my complaints. And now let's get into today's first story. Harvard professor Francesca Gino has been stripped of tenure. Oh my goodness, Harvard, world-renowned institute. You might have heard of them. They are going toe-to-toe with the Trump administration on, I think, about 19 different things. But here's one that's apolitical in nature as far as I can tell. Francesca Gino is a world-renowned researcher. She made apparently $1 million in salary last year, not in a bunch of book deals and other fantastical things, but actual salary paid from University of Harvard. Goodness gracious. She's a renowned researcher on dishonesty and behavioral psychology. How can we give gentle nudges to help people avoid the temptation of dishonesty, even when lying is really, really tempting because we can lie and say things that we wish were true and we appreciate the consequences of them being true. And we can just pretend they're true. That's why lying is so great. I can tell my mom I did my homework. I can tell my kids that I signed up for their whatever field day volunteer. Yeah, it's a lie, but it's so convenient. And Francesca has shown us through some research how easy it is to sort of nudge people in the direction of honesty. Thing is, Francesca has fallen victim of her own success. She researched all these phenomenal ways to get away with lying, so she lied. She made up a bunch of data, allegedly. Although I think it's pretty strong allegation at this point. She's been stripped of her tenure from Harvard. One of her research partners, Dan Ariely, is a famous author. He's got half a beard. He looks sort of ridiculous. That is the truth. He's also researched a lot on honesty within the human psyche and how we can nudge people to be more honest. This likens back to the story of Idiocracy. For those of you who are not familiar with the 2001 smash hit Idiocracy, it's a Luke Wilson spectacular. He plays a fantastic average man, jumps forward to the future where the human race has just been absolutely dumbed down. One of the overlooked parts of the story is the Army general who's in charge of this experiment of freezing Luke Wilson for only a year. Well, he starts researching into pimping and he gets a little sucked into his own research. And in fact, it totally consumes him. And I think Francesca Gino, world renowned tenured researcher at Harvard University, who's now fallen flat into disgrace and lost her tenure, I think she's fallen victim to the allure of pimping. And now pimping is a way to be dishonest. You could probably be an honest pimp too, I think, although that's probably harder. But poor Francesca, she just researched too much about the world of dishonesty, and the allure was just too much for her. Um, it's not clear exactly what she did, but the allegations are that she made up some data or that she doctored her data to make it look like her conclusions that she wanted to be true were actually true, which Francesca, you could have just hired any data scientist. It doesn't matter what the data, we don't have to manipulate the data. There are so many different algorithms, so many different ways we can manipulate what we're modeling in the data, the way we structure our model. If you're looking for an outcome, we can model the data to give you the outcome that you want. You don't have to actually go and change the data. That's the beauty of data science. We can find the outcome given the data. We don't have to manipulate the data. But Francesca made a couple $1 million over the past few years. In worst case, she loses her tenure and she keeps the money. That's pretty good incentive for dishonesty, if you ask me. So, congratulations, Francesca Gino. You have built some very dirty data and you have profited massively because of it. Congratulations. Let's see. Do we have another story for today? We do have another story. If you're listening to this as soon as it airs, because you're a huge Dirty Data fan, then I salute you. Then please reach out in the comments or the feedback or the stars or the plus, and say, hey, Evan, love what you're doing here because my fragile ego really feeds on it. I have to wear these loud shirts. If you're only listening, not watching, you may not be aware, but I'm wearing a bright yellow floral pattern. I guess these are lemon tree pattern shirt. Okay, I need attention and I need the feedback. So I would really appreciate the hey Evan, love what you're doing. Thumbs up. Keep it going, Evan. Hey Evan, your podcast sucks. That's welcome too. I feed off the negativity as much as the positivity. But if you're listening to this when it first comes out, it's the first day of NCAA baseball regionals. Now, March Madness, NCAA basketball, it's huge fandom. Folks tune in, folks that aren't even basketball fans, folks that aren't college fans, they just tune in because of the allure of March Madness. It's well marketed, it's exciting. Look, college baseball is just as exciting. They don't run up and down the court as fast. They take a good 45 seconds between pitch, but that gives you plenty of time to drink your ice cold Budweiser in a can or bottle. Tastes just as good. But I lament that there are very few college baseball fans in the world. So there are very few people who will appreciate this dirty, dirty data. Much like the college basketball tournament, there's a selection committee. There are a bunch of automatic qualifiers for teams that win their conference tournaments. And then there are a bunch of at large qualifiers. Teams that had a good season but didn't win their conference still get selected to join the NCAA postseason tournament. And in the world of college baseball, RPI is king. That's the ratings percentage index. It is a metric. Now, if you're listening to this, perhaps you're in the data and analytics space and you've been asked to calculate a metric or design a metric or report a metric. And you've likely faced the trade off between different metrics. Some things are simpler and easier to understand. Some things are more nuanced and take a more holistic look at everything that's around. And it's oftentimes very difficult to choose a metric and balance those trade offs. Well, in the world of college baseball, where RPI gets so much weight, RPI is she but we keep on using it, and I just don't get it. Now, the formula is not super complicated, but it's too complicated to get into the math directly over the podcast airwaves. So, what I will tell you is that roughly 25% of your RPI is determined by your team's record, wins versus losses. Roughly 50% is determined by your strength of schedule. So, the teams that you play, your opponents, their wins and losses. And then another 25% is determined by your opponent's record. So there's a huge weight on playing against very good teams. Now, there's also weight for home games versus away games. And you're penalized more if you lose a home game, and you're rewarded more if you win an away game. And so teams have realize that this ratings percentage index is a huge determinant of their postseason fate. Where will they end up? And so, what you end up with is teams like the University of Kentucky. God bless them. Good on you. Made it to the College World Series last year. Had a fantastic team last year. This year, a very mediocre team. 5 games under 500 in conference play. Only 5 games over 500 across the season, but played some hard teams and played some hard teams on the road. So do you know what? Rating percentage index looks pretty good and they make the tournament. And you got a team like Virginia, University of Virginia. I have no love for the University of Virginia. They've won a World Series in the last 10 years, I think exactly 10 years ago, 2015. Uh, but they're preseason number 2. Happy for them to fall on their face. But the thing is, they're over 500 in conference play. They've played a relatively easy out of conference schedule, but they've won almost all of those games and they've played them at home instead of away. Which, goodness gracious, how can you penalize a good team for wanting to host other teams? Draw some of that revenue. But their RPI suffered because of it. And here's the real doozy. Here's what makes this a real dirty data showcase is they had a series against a top 10 team, Florida State. It was at Florida State, so it would have been a away series for Virginia. But it got canceled because a lunatic went crazy and started shooting up the place in Tallahassee. So they canceled all 3 games. Well, here's the deal. We've got access to a simple spreadsheet and basic arithmetic, so we can calculate what their RPI would have been had they played that game. And they played 3 games there. And here's the thing. Had they played those 3 games and lost all 3 of them, now they have a worse record, a worse conference record. They have 0 more wins and 3 more losses. Their ratings percentage index takes them from about 55 to about 45, which is now safely in the zone where they would make the tournament. So they would have been better served to play 3 extra games, lose them all 100 to nothing, and then they would be in the postseason tournament. Now, sometimes it may be hard to weigh your options between different metrics and how you choose certain things. And this is in the world of data and analytics. Ultimately, people are trying to make decisions based off our data, based off our models. And as simple as we can be, like, here's an RPI, here's a number 1, here's a number 2. That's great. But as soon as you can build a scenario that is so outrageous that this team could play 3 extra games, lose them all 100 to nothing, and then they would have had a much better season and would be worthy of a postseason berth. And that's how you can tell you got some bullshit metric. So that's what RPI is. And that's what I encourage you to do, dirty data listener, when your boss says, what's this KPI? I encourage you to say, well, it's this, but here's why this KPI is some bullshit. Because if this wild fantastic scenario were to take place, here's what the KPI would be. Now, do we really want to make decisions off this KPI when this is the case? No, because it's dirty. It's not dirty data. The data is clean, but it's a dirty metric. And dirty metrics are just as bad as dirty data. In fact, they're maybe worse. Except they're not worse because Francesca, Gino, you could have just used a dirty metric and instead you made the data dirty. You made clean data dirty. And who cares what the metrics are? Who cares what your analysis says? Because you're making up data. These are the stories that I'm happy to talk to you about on today, this second to last day, penultimate day of May, and the final episode of the first month of the Dirty Data Show. Thank you, dear listener, for joining in. Thank you for all the folks who have reached out and given feedback and stroked my fragile ego. And thank you to the YouTubers who comment on how I can stare at this bright light without my sunglasses, or perhaps I just get used to it and this is the price of fame. I'll leave you with a prediction. Dirty Data Show. It's that Georgia Tech makes it to their first super regional in 20 years. Okay. Okay. They deserve to host. Their RPI wasn't good enough. So they have to be number 2 seed to go over to Ole Miss. But here's my prediction. Okay. Georgia Tech makes it out of the regional. They go to a super regional. Okay. All right. I'll see you next time if I don't get replaced by AI. Thanks, dear listeners.